In a world where gates crack open the sky and monsters pour through like nightmares given weight and teeth, power is everything. Awakening is everything. At 18, every candidate stands in the resonance hall and waits for the system to speak. For most, it does. A crack of light, a class name hovering in gold, the crowd cheers, the future opens. For Kale Duran, the system said nothing, not a flicker, not a whisper. The resonance crystal in front of him stayed cold and dark, while every single one of his classmates blazed with color. Crimson for a berserker, silver for a spellblade, violet for a shadow striker. Kale stood there until the examiner looked away, until the laughter started, until Vale Kren, the top-scored candidate in the entire Irongate Hunter Academy intake, walked past him and said the thing everyone was already thinking. Null. He's a null. He said it like a diagnosis, like a verdict, like the word itself was embarrassing just to speak. Kale left the hall. He didn't argue. There was nothing to argue. The crystal didn't lie. 4 years passed. 4 years of doing the work no hunter wanted, clearing beast spill zones after the real awakeners were done, hauling dead wraith carcasses to processing yards in the rain, showing up at guild intake days with a null badge on his vest and getting turned away before he could finish a sentence. The pay was survival wages. The hours were brutal. The looks people gave him, that particular blend of pity and contempt reserved for someone who simply didn't make the cut, those he learned to ignore. He learned something else too. He learned the monsters, not how to fight them, how to watch them, on the waste-clearing jobs. While the guild hunters traded stories and kept their distance, Kale stayed close. He noticed patterns. A glassfang hound, supposedly vicious, that paused every time he crouched low and kept his hands open. A low-rank smoke imp that followed him 3 blocks before finally sitting at the edge of the cleanup site like a confused stray. He started logging them in a cheap notebook, behaviors, triggers, the particular way a creature's ears tracked sound before it moved. The hunters would have laughed, so he kept the notebook in his bag and said nothing. He was good at keeping things quiet by then. 4 years had taught him that much. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday in the rain-soaked ruins of Gate Site 14, a year after everyone had forgotten his name, the system spoke. Not a whisper. A declaration. Hidden class detected. Conditions met. 4 years sustained proximity to non-hostile beast kind. 0 combat kills. Demonstrated behavioral resonance above threshold. Awakening. Warden class. Warden. The Beastbond Sovereign. Tier. Unranked limitless. Primary ability. Eternal bond. Tame any creature. Each bonded beast evolves permanently alongside you. No cap on bond count. Stat multiplier per bond. Times 10 secondary ability. Resonance sight. Perceive a creature's true nature, its latent evolution path, its hidden potential. Current bond count, 0. Current stat multiplier, times 1. The bonds you form will decide what you become. Kale read it twice, then a third time. Then he looked at the glass fang hound, sitting in the rain, 30 meters away, watching him with yellow eyes, and he held out his hand. The bond snapped into place, like a door swinging open to a room that had always been there. He named her Ash. His stats multiplied by 10. Over the next 11 months, Kale worked. He didn't announce anything. He didn't go back to the academy. He took the same grunt assignments, cleared the same waste zones, but now he walked out of them with something extra. A smoke imp named Vex, compact and fast as Reflex. A stoneback crawler named Rook, defense ranked at null tier when he bonded her, but after selections of Kale's resonant slight swipe guiding her evolution, Rook was a wall of layered armored plates that deflected C-rank strikes like they were thrown paper. Every bond multiplied his base stats, again and again and again. He tracked every creature's evolution path with the same quiet attention he'd spent 4 years practicing in the waste zones. He didn't rush bonds. He read them. He waited for the moment the creature's latent path aligned with his needs, then nudged the evolution with accumulated bond energy. Ash, the Glassfang Hound, evolved twice. First into a storm runner, lean and cracking with static, then into a pale sovereign wolf that made the ground hum when she walked. By month 11, Kale had 12 bonds. His multiplier was times 10 to the 12th. His physical parameters sat somewhere the system's standard assessment tools simply refused to display. The number showed up as an error outside measurable range. He almost smiled at that. He would have stayed invisible indefinitely if Gate Site 7 hadn't gone critical. The Irongate Hunter Association classified it an S-rank rupture at dawn, a dimensional crack the width of a city block, pouring out abyssal-class creatures that hit the local hunter squads like a wall hitting water. 3 S-rank hunters were on scene within 20 minutes. Vale Kren was one of them. Vale, 4 years out of the academy, exactly as celebrated as his intake day promised. The 1 S-rank Lightning Awakener in the Northern Association, golden-ranked, sponsored, the face of the Irongate Guild's recruitment campaigns. For 6 hours, Vale's team held the line. Barely. The abyssal-class creatures kept coming. The breach wasn't closing. The S ranks were burning mana reserves they wouldn't recover for a week. Association Command was already drafting an evacuation order for the surrounding residential zones. Then the pale sovereign wolf walked out of a side alley at ground level, silent as a cloud, and sat down between the hunters and the breach. Ash. And behind her came 11 more. Vex threading smoke between buildings. Rook's armored bulk settling into a defensive line. 9 others fanning into positions that the S-rank hunters only recognized as tactical flanking formations after they were already in place. And behind them, hands in his jacket pockets, Null badge still pinned to his vest because he'd genuinely forgotten to take it off, came Kale. He looked at the breach. He looked at the creatures pouring through. Abyssal rank, massive, loud, trailing void energy that made the air taste like copper. He looked at Ash, who was already reading the rhythm of the nearest creature's charge pattern. Ash, he said. Left flank, displace the lead. Rook, anchor the center. Vex, the void trail, seal the path. What happened in the next 4 minutes was not a fight. Fights have exchanges. Fights have back and forth. This was a closing door. Ash hit the lead abyssal at an angle that drove it sideways and down before it could register what had touched it. Rook absorbed the center charge without taking a step backward. Vex moved through the void trail the breach was projecting, and something in the Smoke Imp's evolved form responded to the void energy in a way the system categorized as breach suppression active. The crack in the sky narrowed, then sealed with a sound like a bell struck once and never again. 30 seconds of silence. Vale Kren stood 12 meters away. His lightning-coated hands were still raised. His armor was cracked at the shoulder. He was staring at Kale, the way people stare at something that doesn't fit inside the space their understanding has allocated for it. He stopped. Started again. What class is that? Kale looked down at his Null badge. He unpinned it finally and put it in his pocket. Warden, he said. Warden. Vale said the word like he was testing its weight. I've never seen that class. You wouldn't have. It doesn't show up in standard resonance readings. The association cameras were rolling. 3 news drones had circled in during the seal. Every frame of it was already uploading. The 12 bonded creatures, the 4-minute breach seal, the S rank who hadn't moved a step because there was nothing left to do. Vale knew exactly what those cameras were capturing. He was the most decorated hunter in the Northern Association. He had looked at this man 4 years ago in a resonance hall and said one word. He knew what came next. Vale Kren 1 S rank, Northern Association top ranker, crouched on one knee. Not a formal kneel, not ceremony. Just a man who had run out of ways to stand at full height and mean it. The association will want to debrief you, he said. And I want to apologize. What I said at intake, that was wrong. Kale looked at him for a moment, not with anger, not with the satisfaction of someone waiting 4 years to hear those words, just clear and calm, and a little tired in the way of someone who had been working since before dawn. I know, he said. He turned toward Ash, who was already waiting at his side, and walked away from the breach site into the late morning light. 12 shapes moved with him, some striding, some drifting, one enormous and armored and utterly without hurry. The association cameras tracked him until he disappeared around the corner. In the Orangate Academy's faculty lounge, 3 professors who had signed his Null discharge papers 4 years ago watched the footage in silence. One of them turned off the screen. Nobody said anything. There was nothing useful to say.